Hello, everyone. Welcome to Snap Take. This is Glazer of Snap Judgments, the official podcast of Marvel Snap Zone. The OTA has dropped, and it is earth-shattering. And not just because Mobius is back. They changed Shang-Chi, and with it, they changed the game of Marvel Snap. Not going to make you wait. Let's get to it. Before we go, though, please hit that sub button. It helps us out. It's free to you. We bring you the best Marvel Snap content. We are your home for a video every single weekday. We've got at least 2 brand new decks and everything else you could need for Marvel Snap. Check this morning's video if you don't believe me. Really proud of it. We have a new take on series drops that I don't think anyone else has said yet. This is the balance changes. We're going to just say what each of these are, and then we will look at decks for each and review them each one at a time right before their decks. Cool. So Mobius is now a 3/3 and back to being an ongoing ability. Doctor Strange is a 2/3 with the exact same ability. Shang-Chi now only kills 10 power cards, not 9. SheHulk bumps to 10. Warpath bumps to getting +5 to being a 10. Jessica Jones gets +1, which tops her out at 9, not 8. Strong Guy loses a cost and a power, so now he's a 3/3. That becomes a 3/9. And the monster from Monster Island becomes a 6/10. Cool. We're going to talk about all these, but Monster Island later. Monster Island is nice and simple. It's basically just to make sure it still gets killed by Shang, because that's a fun interaction in the game. It changes the way that we play the game. It's like an extra bonus for running Shang, so on. Everything else we'll talk about as we go through decks. We have like 24 decks, so let's get started. With Mobius, notes on Mobius's design. Sorry, the notes on Mobius and his design will be discussed in tomorrow morning's video. There's a video every day. We'll get to that later. For now, Mobius is a 3/3. For the next week, he's going to be played a lot. I think certain decks will continue to play him, but he's not going to be nearly the consistent meta force he has been throughout Marvel Snap. Sorry, I need to adjust myself. There we go. He's not going to be the consistent meta force he has been throughout Marvel Snap at all. He's a very good card, but a 3/3 is hard to fit into decks, while a 2/3 is something you can play on rate, sort of on curve, almost by accident. Turn 4, dropping 2/2s is a regular play. Mobius on 3 means you kind of have to play him on 3. You don't really want to be playing a 3/3 on 4. You're falling severely behind. I think people are going to play him a lot because they're going to be happy he's back, be disappointed, and sort of drop him, with a few key exceptions, which is what we're going to look at here. The first deck I don't think is going to drop him is Loki. I think Loki really wants. Sorry, ignore that it's a 2/3 in the picture. It takes the deck builders a little while to catch up to the OTA. So Mobius is a 2/3, right? Sorry, a 3/3 now. Loki can play that because, well, it just wants to sort of like, if it's playing Maria Hill and then Snowguard, it can take a turn to just say, okay, I want to win the mirror. I want my Quinjet and Loki to pay off. So now I can just drop Loki. I can drop Mobius, drop Quinjet, and just reap all the benefits. While my opponent, who might be playing Loki, will suffer. My opponent, who might be playing Death, will suffer. And if I steal their Death or whatever else, my Death gets cheap, and theirs doesn't. And that's backbreaking. That's a game win, right? This is one way to do that. Does this deck still want Werewolf by Night? Maybe. Maybe Mobius has to replace it. Maybe Agent Coulson just goes. But something along these lines is the deck. This isn't supposed to be super refined. It's just supposed to give you an idea of how and where we would go in order to maximize these new cards. Thanos Lockdown, I think, also goes back to Mobius. Thanos Lockdown plays Cosmo as a 3, and Cosmo is fine as a 3, but not especially important. As a 3, though, Mobius is often getting skipped in this deck, because getting that early Professor X or early 5 out when you have Psylocke or Time Stone is the game's plan. Okay, fine. So that's what you want to do. It's not going to happen every game. Mobius gives you play into a lot of decks that could otherwise beat you when you don't get your Professor X game plan off. So you want to have that backup plan. Mobius gives you that backup plan. I think he goes in this Thanos Lockdown list. Next up, we have Surfer. 3-cost card means put it in Surfer. This isn't brain surgery. We do this with basically every card that costs 3. I decided to not go with the Werewolf by Night list because having an extra 3-cost ongoing means I didn't think that was as good. So I decided to throw Negasonic and Juggernaut into Storm here as a way to say, okay, I win a lane that way, and then my Sarah goes off and your cost reduction doesn't. If your cost reduction doesn't go off, then suddenly Goose looks better, and we have a deck. That's how I ended up at this one. I think it's probably pretty good. Spider-Man's a little dangerous with Storm and Goose. Maybe it should be a different card. Werewolf? I don't know. I don't know if there's enough ongoings, and I don't love that with Brood. And Brood is really, really great with cards like Goose. So something should be there. But this deck is probably very good, and I think this is a fairly natural fit for Mobius. Next up, we have Shuri. Um, so if Shuri doesn't see Sauron on 3, it doesn't really have anything it wants to do. So why not have Mobius as what you do on 3 to like mess up your opponents? Loki stealing enough of your good stuff. Like it's a 50-50-ish matchup, and Loki stealing enough of your good stuff lets them beat you. Why not just have that advantage so that you beat it instead? That's my basic logic here. Next up, we have Shang-Chi. So I'm going to be completely serious. I think this is a huge mistake. I think since the game's inception, everything has been balanced around Shang-Chi killing 9 power cards. And they changed a few cards, right? But I think that the actual ripple effects of this are going to be felt throughout the meta. That change in the breakpoint of 1 power when Glenn was on our podcast. Glenn Jones, lead designer Marvel Snap, was on the Snapchat podcast, our podcast. We talked about how they have to determine breakpoints. They have to make breakpoints, and that 9 was a breakpoint largely because of Shang-Chi. Well, now 10 is that breakpoint, and that's obviously going to affect some of these other cards they changed, right? But it also changes the value of like 1,000 cards. Like cards like Legion get exponentially worse because now they're 2 away from the breakpoint instead of 1 away from the breakpoint. And now does 6 still mean what it did in terms of stats? Like there's a lot of changes. 6 used to be really, really great for 4. Is that now too little? Are we trying to get more out of it, or do we want to like skip 4s? There are cards that benefit. The card that immediately springs to mind is a huge benefit to me is Rescue. Rescue is now a very good card, I think. But I think this is going to change the game fundamentally. And I'm not sure that's a good thing, but I think we need to come to a new understanding of what specific points of power mean in Marvel Snap. Also, Werewolf hitting 9 often by turn like 5 and then jumping up to 11, 14 after that is a problem. Right now, that's a card that's really hard to kill with Shang-Chi, and it was already hard to kill with Shang-Chi. It takes it from a card that was like powerful, but you could Shang it if you played well, to a card that like, oh boy, you better guess right. Or like if you have priority, now you just can't do anything. Hopefully you have Shadow King and they don't have Luke. Shang still has many regular homes. I don't think anything has changed. It goes in things like this. This is a bounce deck. Bounce deck, a move deck that's running Shang-Chi. It's also running Mobius because, well, Spider-Man's the only 3. It can play a move card on 3. It can play Mobius on 3 if it sees the right matchup. That's a tech card spot. That could also be several other cards. It doesn't super matter which. You don't want armor and you don't want Cosmo. Pick another one. But Mobius is a reasonable shout here. You fill up locations, you make things big with Elsa, and if they drop something big somewhere, you kill it with Shang-Chi. It's easy to choose to win or lose priority with this type of deck. You can lose priority by just playing everything into the Elsa lane, and then when you move things out of the Elsa lane, moving them into places where your opponent has a lot of power. Or you can play things in the Elsa lane and move things out to a place where your opponent has little power and take the lead and get initiative. That works too. Next up, we have Destroy. So I think this is a really, really cool home for Destroy. I haven't seen this version of Destroy, but it's always one of the highest win rate versions. Bluntly, this is the almost exact deck. Excuse me. Sorry. It's been a long day. This is almost the exact deck that I'm gonna put Gladiator into when Gladiator comes out. I don't think Gladiator's gonna be good. Check Marvel Snap Zone. There should be an article out at some point today that talks about like 50 creators' feelings on all the new cards. I'm super down. I wrote the article. I'm super down on Gladiator. But I think if Gladiator has a home, it's basically this deck. So I'm gonna put Gladiator into this deck for Sabretooth and see how that feels. That said, Shang has to be here. Shang is one of the keys if you're not running Deadpool and other card. Hulkbuster, then Shang-Chi gets you to that big null. Stature Hawk will never die. This is one of the forever decks of the game. It's gonna run Shang-Chi. It keeps running Shang-Chi. Armor is super a tech card here. That can be like 6 different 2s. It should probably just be Jeff. But it's armor here because Destroy is all over the meta, and having a random tech armor often wins you games. You can also protect a Shang once in a while. Sorry, protect a Darkhawk from a Shang once in a while. Darkhawk is a reasonably big beneficiary here, by the way, because like if it's a 6 power and then you're going to play your Rock Sled and Korg to pump it up if your opponent has initiative, I guess that's always been the case. Never mind. Darkhawk is fine. Same card as always. Next up, we've got Loki Shang. This is basically the KM best version. I decided to throw in Rogue over Beast because Mobius is in the meta, so why not? You can keep Beast in there. No, excuse me, this is the Lambie version, not the KM version. So I threw Rogue in for Beast for the time being. Feel free to run Beast. I don't think that there's a super right or wrong answer here. Beast cost reduction looks like it's going to be worse for about a week, so I'm probably going to cut Beast for a week and then I'll go back to him. SheHulk is a 6/10, just how she was printed in the first place. Hulk as a 10, that's fine. I think this card's better as a 6/10. I think it's extremely strong, and Mobius counters it, so giving it the extra power, so when it does go off, it's stronger. Makes sense to me. Sauron. Shoron, excuse me. Sauron now has the play of pass on Shuri on 4, pass on 5, She-Hulk and Taskmaster on 6. That is so much better of a play when She-Hulk is 20 power than when She-Hulk is 18 power. It's ridiculous. Because now you're adding 40 power as opposed to 36. That's plus 4 power on the last turn. If you've got like other good cards out at that point, if you've got, for example, a Nebula, a Lizard, and a Sauron out, or Nebula, Lizard, and Armor out, you're probably going to win. Right? Like you're adding a lot of power to the board. You win a lot of games of Snap that way. And of course, you still have the other regular game plans of Shuri Red Skull Taskmaster, Shuri Vision Taskmaster, so on and so forth. Sheena gets slightly better. This is already one of the best decks in the game. I took Cosmo out for Rogue on the, again, Mobius theory. Maybe for a week this goes down. If I'm right about Mobius, this goes right back up, and She-Hulk is better. Therefore, the deck is better. Warpath becomes a 4/10 when his effect goes off. Giving up a lane is a really, really like rough effect to take, but Warpath does his best for it. It's a fine buff. Warpath is good in this type of home. This deck traditionally runs Atuma over Rescue, but since Atuma can be killed by Shang and Rescue can't, I felt like Rescue is just better. Rescue is also really, really nice with Professor X, with Goblins, so on. Sometimes they'll just try and throw something big there. When you drop Rescue, right, thinking you're going to Professor X, and you can drop a Hobgoblin and like just be like, all right, cool, I win that lane. That's awesome. And then if you had Cosmo out elsewhere, you drop Destroyer on Cosmo and you win. Or you drop an Orca in a lane alone, you win. This deck may want Ms. Marvel. I don't know. I didn't actually think that far, but I think this deck is actually pretty freaking good right now. If Daredevil worked properly anyway. Next up, we have Spectrum Destroyer. This is a classic early Series 3 deck. This is all Series 3 or lower cards. This is because so many of these cards are Series 2, this was often said to be the first deck to target get Destroyer when you get to Series 3, and then you can just play this deck with Captain America and the Super Skrull spot and compete immediately. I don't think that's the case as the power level of the game has gone up, but this is still a really good deck, and Warpath has a really, really good home here. Sometimes Iron Man is Claw, sometimes it's not, just so you know. Jessica Jones, I think, is probably decent now. I think it's worse than Rescue, but it's decent. Like, Rescue is really, really going to be good, in my opinion. If, I just feel like I have more control over, like, I mean, I guess I have equal control over either, right? But, I more often want to play somewhere than don't want to play somewhere, I feel. So, I like Rescue better, but Jessica Jones now is the same stats. Ms. Marvel deck, Initiative good, Storm good, 9 power and Storm lane. Basic logic, right? She's a 4/5. That's pretty solid. That should work really well. Iron Lad hitting that is still going to be good. You can play her in one lane if your opponent wants to compete there. It's just mild anti-synergy with Professor X, but nothing terrible. She's a powerful card. You can play her there and then like move Vision there if you needed to, and that would work well, especially with the current hot location. All that kind of stuff ends up working in Snap. Another Ms. Marvel build, though a different version. See, Professor X Alioth build. Instead, we have a Onslaught Doom list. This one's all about putting power on the board and going wide. This can also run Jessica Jones under the same caveats as before. You drop Ms. Marvel, you drop Jess Jones in another location. You say that's going to be 8 there. Sorry, excuse me. That's going to be 9 there plus 5. I've now got 14 power in that location. Enjoy yourself, right? The rest of this deck is obviously fairly self-explanatory. Wasp is just a way to get your buff up if you need it. You can see this pretty easily being an evolutionary build, but let's not go too far down that rabbit hole. Strong Guy as a 3/3 is actually really interesting. I think Strong Guy as a 3/3 is a very cool card. Is it good? My guess is still no, but I'm willing to experiment and see because decks like this exist. This is Den's Discard Surfer. Basically, it says I'm going to Surfer at the end of the game, play cards like Gambit and Swordmaster to empty my hand, and that Strong Guy is going to jump up to a 9 power card. A 9 power card that becomes an 11, a 6 power card that becomes an 8. Gambit destroys a card. Enjoy yourself. You're likely to win that game of Marvel Snap. I think that this is pretty damn cool, and I'm going to play the crap out of this list. And it might be bad, but I don't care. Next up, we have Safety Blade, another of my Marvel Snap Zone compatriots. Stats on Stats, which is basically just a all the 3-cost cards that get stats, or sorry, the 4 3-cost cards that get really big. Dakin becomes an 8, Heck Monkey becomes a bajillion, Bishop becomes a 7 or 8, Strong Guy becomes a 9, and then you go to town, right? You're playing Dakin specifically Blade right after, or you're playing Colleen to chuck the Dakin. You are using Kitty to pump Bishop and Angela. You've got Elsa for extra pumps. Mobius stops your opponent's bullshit. Mobius probably has to go here, I guess. You have too many 3s at that point. Colleen handles the shard or just sort of sits in hand. She can chuck Kitty at some points in some games. And yeah. And Mysterio's great. Mysterio's really, really great. As far as it triggers Hit Monkey, it triggers Bishop. It's a good way to play cards. Blade and Colleen basically help empty your hand, especially with Sarah, and then you get the Strong Guy buff. I don't think this is as good as the last deck, but it is very cool. Next up, we have this week's podcast guest, D Money. We also had Z. Z will be in a deck tomorrow morning, or Z's deck will be featured tomorrow morning. We have D Money's Strong Guy meta. D Money's deck is awesome. This deck was really fun a few seasons ago. During the Dakin season, actually. It was never meta, but it was always good, and I bet you it's good again now that Strong Guy is a better and easier to play card. Honestly, with both Captain Marvel and Shang-Chi and Zabu, I don't even know if you need Zabu anymore for this deck. You want to spend your last turn Modoking to make sure your hand is completely empty. If your hand is completely empty, Strong Guy's a 9. Captain Marvel goes where you need to win the game. Shang-Chi killed something on 5, ideally. Dakin's a 3, 8, so on and so forth. I think that this deck is both cool and fun. It puts out way more stats than it looks like it does, and it's a control deck, but it's a fun control. Again, I think the best of these is probably Den's deck, but these are all very cool decks, right? Like, you can't tell me these aren't fun. Finally, we have Doctor Strange. Doctor Strange is the card I'm most excited about the change for. I'm dreading the Shang-Chi change, and I don't enjoy Mobius. I think it's an anti-fun card, and I'm much more like pro doing things. Like Shang-Chi kills things proactively, and Mobius kills things reactively, and I like just by existing. So I like cards like Shang-Chi. I don't like cards like Mobius. But Doctor Strange is super cool. We've been calling for this buff forever. I did predictions in this morning's video, and this would have been on the prediction video, but I got sick of predicting it. I thought it was never going to happen. I even said I thought Move was going to get a buff, and this isn't the buff I thought of because I was like, they're never going to do it. I wanted them to. 3/3 was too bad for him. 2/3 might be too good. This is a nice pure move list. Basically says, I'm going to run all the move cards. Let's see if they can get big. Let's see if they can do enough. I probably want Forge over Nico here, but Nico's push to the right is pretty damn good. I don't even know if I need Heimdall. Heimdall is obviously game winning, but a turn 5 of Cloak and something else will get me a lot of power, and then if I just drop some more powerful cards on the last turn of the game, I feel like I can win. If the opponent doesn't counter this, I think this might actually be a good deck, or the shell of a good deck. It probably needs refinement. This is Den's bounce version of the same deck. Basically says if I run Falcon and Beast, I can do all my cool bouncy stuff twice. Doctor Strange costing 2 is glorious, like absolutely fantastic for this deck. This deck has been trying to be meta forever. It's been oh so close. This might be the push it needs. Phoenix is always where I'm most excited to play cards. This is a straight up Phoenix deck, no Nimrod, no Red Skull, no other nonsense. The highest power card on your side of the board is pretty likely to be Phoenix Force, at which point Doctor Strange is fantastic. It pulls that Human Torch Phoenix Force over, it pulls that multiple man over. That's not only great, but it works if you have to build your own Human Torch or multiple man with Hulkbuster as a way to get that extra power there too. It's real nice. At that point, you probably want to get Venom out, by the way. You want to Venom that card and then Zola it, right? Like you want to Venom as much like a bunch of big stuff and Zola it at that point. But it's still a very powerful play, right? Like you bring a I don't know, let's say it's a Human Torch that is punched once, so it's a 4, right? And then you make it a on turn, you make it a 9, and then you pull it with Ghost Spider on turn 4. Now it's an 18. You pull it to Doctor Strange. Now it's a 36. And you can eat it with Venom still on turn 5, and then you Zola that on turn 6, and you have 36 points in 2 locations. And you win the game, Marvel Snap. Hooray! You can do similar things with Multiple Man, although you don't have to eat it at that point. Multiple Man just spreads the power, so it's fine. Multiple Man in 8 is worse now than it was before. Well, what are you going to do? Spider-Verse, this is more of a fun build. I built this as a theme deck, and then I figured out that if I put Werewolf in it, I think it might be good. So I added Werewolf, added Cloak. Cloak actually fits the Spider-Man theme. I don't think Werewolf especially does. But basically, I've got Human Torch and Vulture to move with Cloak and Doctor Strange, right? And Ghost Spider. Silk moves herself. That makes Miles cheap. I can choose to use Ghost Spider or Doctor Strange on 2099 in some games. I can Heimdall them. There should be Cloak 2099, so on and so forth. There should be an awful lot of ways to put power on the board with this, and Werewolf is so big that I think I can win some games of Snap with this. And playing all the spider cards together in this way, or many of the spider cards together in this way, seems super duper awesome and exciting, and I love it, and I want to play this. So this is another one of the decks I'm really going to try. Oh, right. If you can't find a deck here to try, I'm so sorry. But let's try again tomorrow. I will have 3 more decks tomorrow morning. I promise. Please make sure you hit that sub button, like, comment, ring that notification bell. You won't want to miss out. See you tomorrow.